This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Scientists investigate why colorectal cancer is rising in young adults. Mixing up your workout routine could actually extend your life. Experts weigh in on the current status of the COVID threat. Healthy life expectancy in the UK sees a sharp decline. We debunk myths about gender differences in building muscle mass. A family faces a travel nightmare during a medical crisis. High school athletes use meditation to cope with community violence. One mother shares her honest struggle with postpartum emotional numbness.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We have a lot of ground to cover today, from medical mysteries to personal stories of resilience. Let's get started with our first story.
Next up,
Oncologists are increasingly alarmed by a sharp rise in colorectal cancer among people in their 30s and 40s. Dr. Ning Jin from Ohio State University notes that these cases are not just appearing earlier, but the tumors themselves are often more aggressive and resistant to standard treatments like chemotherapy and surgery. It has now become the leading cause of cancer death for people under 50, even as mortality rates for older populations continue to drop. While about 20% of these cases are linked to hereditary factors like Lynch syndrome, the vast majority remain a mystery. Researchers are now looking closely at the gut microbiome and environmental changes to understand why this shift is happening so rapidly within a single generation, as doctors see more young patients than ever before.
the shift is truly startling for veteran doctors who remember a time when seeing a patient under 50 with colon cancer was almost unheard of. Now, some clinics report that nearly half of their patients fall into this younger demographic. Because routine screening typically doesn't begin until age 45, many of these cases are caught at much later stages, making them harder to treat. Patient advocates are pushing for more awareness and urging young adults to pay close attention to symptoms and family history. The medical community is racing to find the environmental triggers, whether they be diet, pollutants, or changes in our internal bacteria. Until we have more answers, the best defense remains early detection and advocating for oneself in the doctor's office when something feels wrong. Now let's shift to
New research suggests that the secret to a longer life might not be just about doing more exercise, but about adding variety to your routine. A long-term study tracking over 100,000 people for more than 30 years found that those who engaged in a wide range of physical activities had a significantly lower risk of death. The data, published in BMJ Medicine, indicates that the benefits of exercise actually level off after a certain point, suggesting a sweet spot rather than an endless upward curve. Interestingly, the variety of movement mattered regardless of the total volume of exercise performed. This means that switching between walking, swimming, weight training, and even vigorous outdoor work like lawn mowing could provide unique physiological advantages that sticking to a single repetitive activity simply cannot offer.
The study utilized decades of data from the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals' Follow-Up Study, providing a robust look at how lifestyle habits impact longevity. Participants reported everything from jogging and cycling to lower-intensity activities like yoga and stretching. By analyzing these diverse habits, researchers found that mixing different types of movement helps maintain various bodily systems more effectively. While staying active overall is still the most important factor, this research encourages us to step out of our comfort zones. If you're a dedicated runner, adding some resistance training or a weekly swim could do more for your long-term health than just adding more miles. It's a refreshing take on fitness that emphasizes exploration and diversity in how we move our bodies every day to maximize our healthy years.
Moving on,
6 years after the initial lockdowns, the world is reflecting on what has happened to COVID-19. While the virus once brought society to a standstill, it now feels like a threat from the past, for many. Experts suggest we have reached a sort of détente with the virus because nearly everyone on the planet now has some level of immunity through vaccination, previous infection, or both. The virus no longer wreaks the same level of havoc it did in 2020. For most people, COVID has joined the ranks of other respiratory viruses, like the flu or RSV. However, this doesn't mean the risk is zero. For certain vulnerable populations, it remains a significant hazard even as the general public moves on from masks and social distancing to treat it as a common nuisance.
the changing landscape of COVID immunity is a testament to how much our immune systems have adapted. Virologists like Leah Vanderhook have been tracking how humans interact with coronaviruses for years, noting that while the virus continues to circulate, our biological armor is much stronger now. The population of novids, those who have never been infected, is shrinking, and many who think they've avoided it likely had asymptomatic cases. While the virus still animates political debates, its clinical impact on the healthcare system has shifted. The focus now is on who still needs boosters and how to protect those at highest risk. It is a strange transition from a global emergency to a manageable part of our seasonal viral landscape, but it highlights the incredible resilience of human immunity when faced with a new pathogen.
Next up,
a sobering new report reveals that healthy life expectancy in the UK has fallen by about 2 years over the last decade. This means the average person can now expect to live in good health only until just under age 61. The UK is one of only 5 wealthy nations to see this decline, ranking second steepest in its fall. The Health Foundation attributes this trend to a combination of poverty, poor housing, rising obesity rates, and the long-term impact of the pandemic. There is also a massive gap between the wealthiest and poorest areas, with those in affluent regions enjoying up to 20 more years of good health. This decline is creating a significant economic burden, as more people are forced out of the workforce due to ill health well before they reach retirement age.
the data shows a stark regional divide, with London being the only area to see any improvement. In places like Blackpool and Hartlepool, healthy life expectancy for both men and women has dropped to just 51 years. This is a wake-up call for policymakers, as 90% of areas now have a healthy life expectancy below the state pension age. The surge in mental health issues, particularly among young people, is also a major contributing factor. While overall life expectancy hasn't dropped as sharply, the quality of those years is clearly diminishing for a large portion of the population. Experts argue that without addressing the root causes like obesity and social inequality, the UK will continue to struggle with a shrinking workforce and a healthcare system under immense pressure from preventable chronic conditions.
Now let's shift to...
There is a common myth that it is much harder for women to build muscle than men, but experts say this isn't entirely accurate. While men generally have a higher muscle-to-fat ratio due to higher testosterone levels established during puberty, the relative ability to gain muscle through training is remarkably similar between the genders. Professor Leigh Breen, a muscle physiology specialist, explains that although women have significantly lower testosterone, their muscles respond to resistance training with comparable percentage increases in strength and size. This means that women don't necessarily need gender-specific workouts to see results. The principles of progressive overload and consistent training apply to everyone. The perception that men have an inherent advantage in building new tissue often overlooks the fact that both sexes can achieve significant physiological progress when following the same basic strength training protocols.
However, body composition remains a different story. Even with intense training, women naturally maintain a higher proportion of body fat, which is linked to estrogen and reproductive health. While it is possible to shift this balance, pushing body fat to extremely low levels can lead to hormonal disruptions and health issues for women. Professor Breen notes that while the muscle-building potential is there, the aesthetic goal of extreme leanness can sometimes come at a cost to overall well-being. For most people, the takeaway is empowering. You don't need to train differently just because of your gender. Whether you are male or female, your body is capable of adapting and getting stronger. Understanding these physiological nuances helps move the conversation away from limitations and toward a more inclusive approach to fitness and strength for everyone.
Moving on,
a family in Wiltshire faced a heartbreaking situation when their 2-year-old daughter was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor just as they were planning their wedding. Amidst the devastation, they had to cancel their plans, including a large stag trip. While most vendors were compassionate and offered full refunds, EasyJet initially refused to refund £4,000 in flights booked for the group. The airline's policy stated that refunds or credits were only available if the passenger themselves was the one who was ill. This left the father feeling responsible for his friends being hundreds of pounds out of pocket during the most stressful time of his life. Despite a letter from the hospital explaining the severity of the child's condition, the airline initially only offered a voucher for the father's fare and tax refunds for the others.
the situation highlighted a frustrating gap in corporate compassion. The father noted the irony of EasyJet's partnership with UNICEF while they showed such inflexibility toward a family in crisis. After the story gained attention and the airline was questioned about their compassionate serious illness policy, they eventually reconsidered. They belatedly acknowledged that they could act with discretion in exceptional circumstances and issued a full refund for all passengers on the booking. This case serves as a reminder of the stress that rigid corporate policies can add to already tragic personal situations. While the refund was eventually granted, it took significant public pressure to move the needle. For the family, the focus remains on their daughter, but the ordeal with the airline was an unnecessary hurdle during a time when every moment with their child is incredibly precious.
Next up,
In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, student-athletes at Carver High School have found a unique way to deal with the trauma of community violence. After a particularly difficult year where several students were killed or injured by gunfire, the students asked for a dedicated space to process their emotions. This led to the creation of the Restoration Room, a place where they gathered to practice breathing exercises and meditation. Led by 17-year-old Ahmad Arnold, the students used this space to find a sense of peace amidst the chaos of their daily lives. The room features chalkboard walls filled with positive quotes and serves as a sanctuary where they can be vulnerable without judgment. It's a powerful example of how young people are taking charge of their mental health in the face of systemic challenges and personal loss.
the impact of the Restoration Room has been visible to the school staff. Social worker James Transu noted that before the room was established, students often expressed their frustration through physical outbursts, like slamming doors or punching lockers. Now, they have a constructive outlet. Principal Thias Maxwell guides them through visualization exercises, helping them find a peaceful place in their minds, whether it's a quiet cabin or a calm boat. For athletes like Jaydan Gause-Hughes, knowing there is a supportive group of peers who understand their struggle makes a world of difference. In a city where a quarter of homicide victims are teenagers, these students are learning essential coping skills that go beyond the classroom or the playing field. They are building a community of resilience that helps them navigate a very difficult reality with grace and mindfulness.
Now, let's shift to...
Finally, we look at a deeply personal account of the complexities of motherhood. One woman shares her experience of feeling utter despair and numbness after the birth of her daughter, despite having yearned to be a mother for years. Growing up in Italy, she was surrounded by idealized images of the Madonna and Child, which shaped her expectations of an immediate, overwhelming rush of love. However, her reality was far different. She felt a sense of tragedy linked to human reproduction, influenced by her own mother's traumatic childhood and the loss of a sibling. This emotional disconnect made her feel like a failure, even as she performed all the necessary tasks of caregiving. Her story sheds light on the silent struggle many women face when the reality of postpartum emotions doesn't match the cultural narrative of instant maternal bliss.
The author reflects on how her upbringing and the lack of experience with real infants contributed to her struggle. She realized that the yearning she felt was partly a search for the moral compass and love she missed in her own home. It wasn't until she held and smelled her own child that she began to navigate the complicated path toward connection. Her honesty about the grotesque vulnerability of a newborn and the numbness she felt is a brave departure from the perfect motherhood myths. By sharing her journey from despair to a more grounded reality, she offers a sense of solidarity to others who might be feeling the same way. It's a reminder that the bond between parent and child isn't always a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a slow, difficult process of healing and learning to love through the fog of personal history.
That's all for today's briefing. Thank you for joining us for these stories. We'll be back tomorrow with another update on the news that matters most. Have a great day.